G'day. Welcome to Aussievision. This is Craig here, and I am joined by three of my fellow fantastic team members here from Aussievision. We have Fleur, Hayley, and Colleen. How are you all going today?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, pretty good. My head is spinning from the last 24 hours, I'll be honest. We're recording this on Thursday night, which means that in the last 24 hours, we started with Edgar Allan Poe. We went through Lazara's food allergies, and we've just heard the UK song drop. Very, very exciting there. But today we're here to talk about something that's still to come. Coming up this weekend, we have the final of Portugal's Festival da Canção. 12 exciting songs coming out of Portugal. Plenty
13.
of good options here.
13 songs.
Sorry, yes.
Yep.
Because there was one person whose televote failed during the semi-final. How strange. 13 songs coming up this weekend, and will compete for the much cherished ticket to Liverpool for Portugal. I'm going to kick us straight off, guys. We've got 13 songs, but I want you to just give me one to start with, and I want that one to be who you think we're going to be seeing in Liverpool flying the Portuguese flag. So do you go to you, Fleur, first? Who do you think is going to win this weekend?
Mimicat.
Yeah? Why?
Mimicat. Why? Because her song is brilliant. I love it. But I think she's doing quite well in the odds as well. I think this is the favourite. I'm not sure, but I'd be surprised if it was someone else, because I think she's got the best package going and nothing sounds like this. So it's going to be a standout.
100%. It's got that cabaret sort of musical theatre edge, which the other ones don't have, I think. Hayley, do you agree? Do you think Mimicat's got this in the bag?
I actually like a different song and want it to be the winner, which is the Neon Soho song. For the same reason Fleur thinks it's going to win. I find Neon Soho's song, there's nothing like it in this group of songs or the competition, and it's got a real it's got its own personality, and I see it standing out, as well as it looks really good on the stage as well.
Yeah, I hadn't really paid much attention to Neon Soho, but then when I was watching the first semi-final, they came on and it was like completely out of nowhere. I was absolutely entranced. I was like, this is the one. Unfortunately, they only qualified with the televote. I think they got the wild card, so I'm a bit worried about how they might go this weekend, but definitely one of my favorites. I agree. Now, Colleen, we've had one vote for Mimicat and we've had one vote for Neon Soho. Are you going to throw another name into the mix, or are you going to agree with Fleur or Hayley?
I'm going to add another name to the mix.
Oh.
So I'm not really, as a disclaimer, I'm not really paying attention to the odds or the charts in Portugal, but I really want Contraste Mundo by You Can't Win Charlie Brown to win. I would love it to win because, just like Saudade, it has the kind of emotional and quiet, impactful kind of vibe that it has. And moving on to Eurovision, I think that will really do well, because in that semi-final, there's no real kind of quiet song that is so impactful. Maybe Aya, but that's not as quiet as I'd probably like.
No, I think that's a great point. And I actually rated Contraste Mundo as my favorite in the Aussievision poll, so I'm a huge fan of that one. I would be a little surprised to see it take it out this weekend, I think, but at the same time, it'd be the sort of surprise where I'd be absolutely delighted at the same time. So I really, really am rooting for them. I think I agree with Fleur, and that's pure that I think Mimicat will win. And I love Mimicat. I think it's great. I think the reason it will win is because it's like topping the Portuguese Spotify streams. I think it's at number 6 last time I saw. There's a few chasing her just behind, but she's well ahead in YouTube views. She's got a couple, like 100K more, I think I saw at one point. And just in general, I think there's an energy behind Mimicat, which means that in the way that I felt maybe with someone like Sudden Lights in Latvia earlier this year, I would be surprised if someone else took it out. But that's not to say that there's not others who I think would do a great job at Eurovision, because I think this is actually a fairly high quality national final. Which means it's probably a good time to have a chat about some of those other options, because there's a lot here. So, Hayley, let's say Neon Soho doesn't take it out. Who are two others who you think people should be paying attention to this weekend?
Well, I'm only basing this purely on my own taste.
Your
I
taste is great, so I'm excited to hear.
I really like Barbara's song. I love a song with a story. I find, sorry about the cut, Black Mamba a few years ago, and the story, and it sucks you in. And I think her little sweet little love song, she's got a sweet voice. It's very delicate. I think that would possibly stand out as well. There's nothing else like it. And I also like the, is it Da Punk sportive song. Now, I have reasons behind this. When I was listening to some of these songs as they were dropping, I discovered this band on Spotify, and it's the type of music I listen to normally, this, the stoner rock. But this is not one of their better songs, but I do like them, but I just don't think we need another rock band in Eurovision this year.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see the Punk Sportif get through. It's very I feel like there's a lot of different rock bands in Eurovision this year. I don't want to pigeonhole them all into being the same, but this one feels very like dad rock to me. And
they've been around a long time, a very long time.
They have, yeah.
Well, maybe it is dad rock then.
Maybe it might be, yeah.
It feels like the sort of thing my dad would listen to.
Were they the televote as well?
So they were the televote wild.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
They got through over a couple of other acts, which I think people thought might take out the televote wild card, but delighted to see them on the Sunday anyway. Colleen, what about you? A couple of other acts to watch out for?
Okay, so on top of Contraste Mudo, I really, really like, as my favorite, I'm going to butcher it, Encruzilhada by Turkey.
Yeah.
I think that for me, it just gives like pure campfire, wholesome vibes. And I know it's probably not going to win. The only chance that it has of winning is if everybody else gets caught in a traffic jam.
It's not Moldova. We don't tend to have that happen in Portugal.
But also on top of that, I really like the key change. Well, it's probably a key change. Not key change. I'm very tone deaf, so there's that. But it's, although key changes are very cliche in Eurovision, I think this one really works just because it brings like the powerful impact, but also signifies the kind of end of the song, but it leaves you wanting for more. Also, another one I really like is Viver by Sal. It's very robotic, but intriguing, but also got these kind of pop sensibilities. And it reminds me of one of my favorite Portuguese songs ever, O Corpo é que Paga by Antonio Barasais. That's probably the wrong pronunciation. I've probably annoyed a lot of Portuguese people, but it does remind me of that.
I've spent the last 2 years being with Portuguese people being annoyed at me, so welcome to the club. I wanted to second your vote for Encruzilhada there because I also really like this one. I don't know if it'll win, but it sort of gives you like that nostalgic feeling. It reminds me of like car trips with my parents when I was like 10 or something. And so yeah, it's one of those songs where I'm like, I'm really glad it's there because it adds to the lineup in this show. So very glad to see him get through a couple of weeks ago. Now, Fleur, we've heard a lot of different names here. Are you going to second any of them, or have you got some more to add?
I have one more to add, but You Can't Win Charlie Brown is probably my second favorite as well. There's just something mesmerizing about that song. The only thing is I would be worried if that goes to Eurovision because I think that would directly compete with Latvia.
Yes, among other things, yeah.
That would be my reservation on that song, but I absolutely love it. It's beautiful. It's so I don't know. It's the atmospheric, I guess is the word, and ethereal. I just love that song. The other one I think could be the dark horse is Inés. Inés with Fin do Mundo.
Fin do Mundo, yeah. The end of the world.
Yeah. Fin do Mundo, yeah. That's how I worked it out. Yeah, I think it probably needs to be refined a bit because it's a little bit messy, but I love her look. I love that modern piano ballad. And again, that's what I love about Portugal because they do what they want to do, and they don't give a continental about what anyone else thinks. They just do Portugal.
And
And they've got so
Portugal,
many
right?
unique songs.
Absolutely. I really liked the studio version of Fin de Mundo, but I will second that I hope it gets refined a little bit for the final.
Yeah.
I think I described it on Twitter as a little bit like her bobbing awkwardly at a piano and then bobbing awkwardly not at a piano. And I hope that they add a little bit more to the staging this weekend for that reason. I don't want to repeat too much of what you guys have said, but I absolutely second You Can't Win, Charlie Brown. Think it's fantastic. So glad it's there and wouldn't be mad to see it win at all. But I also want to second what Hayley said about Barbara, because we had Barbara around a couple of years ago and I wasn't super into Passepartout, which was her song. It was quite French a couple of years ago, but also not. And it sort of didn't really sit like in any one place, I feel. But I really like this one. It's a little bit Taylor Swifty. And I do wish that she would translate some of it into Portuguese, because that's something I really come to Portugal for. It's something I really associate with like what Portugal does at Eurovision. Not that there's anything wrong with singing in English, and if she does make that decision, like valid, but it would be nice. And the other thing I would say about Barbara is that I really hope when we see her again this weekend that she sort of emotes that staging a little bit more. She has this wonderful staging concept where she's like in a freeze frame from like her life, and she's at a party and there's all these people from her life around her and she's sort of engaging with them. But the problem in the semi-final for me was that she was just sort of going through the motions, and it was like she barely knew these people at all. Like she didn't even really look at them. And like this guy's supposed to be her ex-boyfriend or a friend or something, and I really wanted those moments of connection that would make me feel what she's clearly supposed to be feeling in that scene. If she can nail that, though, I think this has a lot of potential, and another one I wouldn't be mad at all if it took out the shock win. I think for the same reasons that Colleen bigged up You Can't Win, Charlie Brown, it's just quiet, it does its own thing, and it has an energy all of its own, which among all the big hitters of semi-final one this weekend, or semi-final one this year rather, I think quiet might actually be the way to go for Portugal.
Delicate.
Yeah, very delicate, very gentle, but all the more sort of memorable for that, I feel. Let's have a little chat about the show more generally, because I feel like as a general rule, Festival da Canção often isn't a national final which gets a lot of attention from fans, except people who are really specifically into it. And yet it's such an impressive lineup of songs. So they really changed up their approach after they came back from a year off in 2016. Obviously did very well with Salvador Sobral and have had sort of mixed results since. But I was wondering how you guys feel about Portugal's general direction within the contest, and like, do you think they're on the right track? Because it feels like they really are unlike any other country at the contest these days. Colleen, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts?
Sure. I think very much like Italy, Portugal are not choosing a song for Eurovision. They're choosing a song for Portugal. So unlike, and also on top of that, unlike very polished national finals such as the Nordics and the Baltics, or very chaotic national finals such as Moldova or Malta, there's nothing else like it. It just feels very arty, like art focused. And yeah, it stands by itself and is probably the most unique national final that we have at the moment.
Yeah, second that. It's certainly one that like I always am interested to see what's going to come out, because usually there's a couple things there that will really cling to you once you get into them, and it won't necessarily be the same things for everyone. Hayley, what about you? What are your thoughts? Do you think this is a good approach for them in terms of the content?
I've never really paid too much attention to the Portuguese final because I've always found it a bit too quiet almost for me. But if there's one thing, is it's very Portuguese. They have a brand, they're sticking to it, and as Colleen said, they're doing what they want, and they're sort of more interested in sending a song that they choose that they like, regardless of whether they think it might be the song to choose to win or whatever they might want to do. The selection the variation with the selection is huge, and big selection of songs. So I think they are on the right track. Yeah.
And what about you, Fleur?
Yeah, I agree. Since Salvador won, they've gone above and beyond. I mean, somehow Portugal became the cool country of Eurovision. They never, I think the only time they'd finished top 10 was sixth back in, I think that was 1996 with Lucia Moniz. Since Salvador won, it has been smacking out the ballpark, really, haven't they? I mean, Cláudia Pascoal, she probably should have done better than 26. I can't believe that came 26. But then the Black Mamba came out, you know. I didn't rate that song, but that staging was
beautiful.
Someone that was brilliant. And last year with Maro, where she performed third, not a great spot. She's finished ninth.
Yeah.
With the most simple staging, they were just standing around a circle. And that's what Portugal do. They don't do bells and whistles. They don't do IKEA cupboards or, you know, whatever else is going on. They do simple staging, and the artist can shine. And that's what they've always relied on. And it's working all of a sudden. I think everyone's kind of sick of, what's Sweden? It's so clinical. It's just like a video.
It feels genuine.
It's genuine. Yeah, they warm to the audience, and I think the audience just laps it up now. We've turned a new leaf in Eurovision, so I'm all for it.
I think what you said about turning a new leaf, because Cláudia Pascoal obviously didn't do so well in 2018, but my feeling there is almost like if she'd been a couple of years later, I think she actually would have probably done a lot better. I just feel like she was almost ahead of her time in terms of like how something like that could do. Because if you look at Maru, it was this similar sort of quiet, like it was itself, and it was content to be itself. And if Cláudia had come a couple of years later, maybe that would have, maybe that would have clung on to certain jurors or certain televoters more to move her up the scoreboard a bit. Actually, I just realized Cláudia is actually back this year as well, and we haven't talked about her.
We haven't. We should.
What do people think of Cláudia's song? Because I think it's very much not what you would have expected from hearing Au Jardim back in 2018.
I'll start off. I like her. I like the performance. I'm not keen on the song as much as the others. It's not bad. There's just a bunch of other songs that I prefer, and I'll be honest here, this is probably the best selection for a national final this year. There's not many songs I don't like. The songs I didn't even vote for when we did our Aussievision rankings, I probably would have voted for in other national finals.
Agree. Yeah, very much so.
But I find Nasi Baria very repetitive. The chorus is only 3 words. And that kind of, I just have a feeling if this is selected, I'll probably get sick of it very quickly. That's the only complaint I have with it.
That's probably a fair comment, actually. I hadn't thought about what my mind would do if Nasi Maria won. But yeah, I think I would also probably get a bit sick of it. But I think I described it as like, we've got pop girlies this year. Like you've got Noah Kirel, you've got like the Edgar Allan Poe girls now. But Cláudia feels like she's doing like pop girl, but sort of through the Portugal looking glass. Yeah. Like it's like what Portugal's interpretation of a pop girl is.
Yeah.
And it's quite entrancing for that. I really enjoy that it's there. I'd like them to see them maybe push this sort of concept for a song like a Portuguese pop girl harder next year, because I think that's a really interesting direction that I'd like to see taken.
Yeah.
But what about you, Colleen? What are your thoughts on Cláudia?
I do agree that it's very pop girl, but very Portugal focused. And just as you say that, it kind of reminds me of one of my other favorite Portuguese bands. They competed at Eurovision, Doce. They're very, I've seen them being described as Portuguese Spice Girls, which I believe is quite true.
No, they're great.
Yeah. Also, I really like the chorus, but I could see how it would get annoying. But it is I think it's a very good earworm, especially for your first few listens.
Yep.
And people do only hear it once on the night. Also, I'm standing a song with the chorus po, Edgar Allan Poe this year. So, I'm not one to criticize repetitive lyrics. But what about you, Hayley? What do you think of Cláudia? Do you agree with what Fleur and Colleen have said?
Yeah, it's quite poppy. I actually put down K-pop anime. The look is very anime, because I got the shock in my life when I saw what she was wearing in her hair. I'm sorry, I'm just not a fan of her song.
No, and I mean it's quite it's an unusual composition, and I think I almost feel like Claudia will probably be okay with that because I feel like it's almost there to be reacted to. Like if you don't like it, that's fine because you had a reaction. And I feel like there's quite a few songs this year that applies to. Another song that we haven't covered yet is Edmundo Inacio with A Festa, or The Party. He really leaps out to me. Like he doesn't sound like anything else. It feels like a more accessible version of something like Conan Osiris to me almost.
Yep.
And so I think maybe a dark horse there. What do you reckon, Fleur? Do you agree?
I agree. That's exactly what I thought when I first heard when I first saw the staging and the semi. I thought, yeah, this is a toned down Conan Osiris. He's got a certain charisma, and you can see that he's really enjoying what he's doing. He connects with the audience really well. My only problem when I've seen the running order is that he comes after Ivandro, and they're kind of got the two sort of man ballady type songs, so that could hurt him. But Edmundo does have, I think, the better song.
Yeah,
it's in a better spot because he's following. But yeah, we can't underestimate what the Portuguese people will vote for, and if they want to play safe, this is probably their safest one they've got.
yeah. I mean, Conan Osiris NQ'd, remember? So
Yeah.
I don't know how safe it is, but I agree that it's definitely got something hypnotic to it. Hayley, how do you feel about A Festa?
This one I don't remember too much, so it isn't on the list of one of my favorite songs, but I don't really have too much to say on him. Sorry.
No, that's interesting because like I think it's a bit of a fan favorite among people who are following it. So if someone like you who's coming into the contest maybe from an outside perspective isn't seeing that, maybe it's not going to do as well as we think. But what about you, Colleen?
I think I do agree with Hayley to a point where I don't remember the song as much as some of the others, but I did pick up on like it's kind of Conan Osirisness, like with its experimental artiness that it has. I think it might do better than Conan Osiris if it does go through, just because Portugal might have realized their mistakes with staging Telemovés back in 2019, and they'd just fix it up and send it as a more elevated type of song.
Yeah, I think it's also just it's got more hooks to it than Telemovés had. And so I feel like to a random televoter tuning in, you're probably more likely to hook on to something in A Festa than in Telemovés. But I don't know. It's interesting that you mentioned Ivandro as well, Fleur, because he, when the songs first came out, was also quite like favored by people who had listened to them. But I don't know, when I first saw the staging, it's got this quite nice visual of him standing in like a city with all these sort of white blocks, and then he doesn't really do anything. And I get a little bit worried about that one standing out. It feels perhaps a bit too static.
Yeah, until the end. It gets a bit of life at the end.
Yeah, but you've got to wait 2 minutes to get there. So we've spoken about a lot of entries over the last couple of minutes, but let's say I'm going to put a name in your mouth, and I realize not everyone agrees with me here, but let's say that the odds and the Spotify streams and the YouTube views are right, and we see Mimicat in Liverpool this year. How do you think Mimicat does in that stacked semi-final one in May? Hayley?
I think it's very different to anything else, and that's I think they've got a direction they're going with it. It's got a personality of its own. I actually think it would do quite well.
Yep, I would tend to agree. I think the only competition she's got in the lineup is La Zara from France, and she's not in the semi-final. So, like in a semi-final lineup, nothing looks like Mimicat. Fleur, how do you feel about it?
I think she would probably get through because, like I said, nothing is going to compete with this. Like even, I'll throw another name out there, Loreen, she gets through. She's going to compete with Alessandro Mele, and she's going to compete with Noah Carell. No one's competing with Mimicat. Mimicat has got this. I think she will, if she gets through Festival da Canção, she will get through the first semi-final. And we're looking at another left-hand scoreboard result for Portugal if she goes through. I think this is probably the only song that would in this lineup.
I unless they go for something aggressively quiet, which stands out in the way Colleen says, I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
Colleen, what do you think? Do you think it would qualify?
I do. I agree that I think it will qualify. Like at the moment for me, it does sit in the middle of my Festival da Canção rankings, but knowing Portugal, I think they will elevate it to a point that is like very clear qualifier. We've seen it before with 2021. I didn't think 2021 would qualify at all until I saw the staging. And I thought Saudade was also in trouble up until I saw the staging. So I think the staging plus the song will elevate it to a clear qualifier.
Yeah, I think I agree. When I first heard the studio track for Mimicat, the one thing I was worried about was this idea that she was going to stand in the middle of the stage and just sort of do this like diva-y straight to camera performance, like she's like Judy Garland or like Cut Price Liza Minnelli or something. But then I saw the staging and she's moving around. She's got this interesting costume where she looks like she's wearing like a shower loofah. And then, you know, she's doing all this interesting dancing, and it just gives it enough of a contemporary edge that I'm not worried that people are going to think it's too old-fashioned or too strange. So yeah, I don't know if it's like a certain qualifier for me, but I think it would definitely be like in the mix there for people who definitely can qualify. So Festival da Canção is coming up on Sunday morning here for us in Australia. It starts off at a nice convenient time of around 8 a.m. and should be done by lunchtime. So it works quite well for us. And the songs will be done after the first hour, and then there'll be 3 hours of padding. So as long as you're there for 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., you'll be able to see everything. Thank you so much to Fleur, Hayley, and Colleen for joining me today. It's been a delight. And looking forward to finding out if Mimicat or one of our friends will be making it to Liverpool this year. Thanks so much, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Ciao.
Yeah.